Viewing or listening to this podcast confirms acceptance of the disclaimer visible on your screen or found at authorscott.com/podcast. Welcome to the Regaining Health and Humanity podcast. I'm Dr. Scott Johnson, your guide on this journey to natural well-being. Here we explore evidence-based insights, revolutionary breakthroughs, and powerful health strategies that not only inform, but inspire change. Together, we'll uncover the mysteries of human existence and unlock the secrets to thriving. This podcast is more than just knowledge. It's your catalyst for unleashing extraordinary potential. Get ready. Your journey to boundless health and happiness starts now. Hello, friends, and welcome to the latest episode of the Regaining Health and Humanity podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Scott Johnson, and I am grateful you are spending some of your time listening today. Today, we're going to discuss leadership, which is a key to inspiring, motivating, and guiding others to achieve great things. But we're going to explore it from a holistic perspective, focusing on the mind-body connection. To investigate this discussion, I've invited wellness and leadership expert Krystalore Crews to the podcast. Krystalore is a former NFL cheerleader, a 20-year veteran of the U.S. Air Force, and has completed an impressive 26 marathons. That's more than I'd ever want to complete, so I'll just throw that in. But she is also a fitness and emotional intelligence coach, motivational speaker, author, and leadership consultant. Krystalore's mission is to empower you to push beyond your limits with her Cruise Beyond Limits movement. She shares her inspiring journey from overcoming military challenges, cancer, and even wheelchair-bound struggles to become a competitive athlete, dancer, and successful entrepreneur. As a certified coach, motivational speaker, and facilitator, Krystalore empowers individuals and teams to reach their full potential. In 2021, Krystalore released her first book, Your Crystal Clear Planner, a woman's 90-day action plan to embrace chaos and live a fulfilling life. Her contagious energy, paired with her incredible story of resilience, will leave you feeling unstoppable. Welcome to the show, Krystalore.
Thank you so much. Oh, it's so great to be here, Dr. Scott.
As we were just chatting before we hit the record button, it sounds like we have a lot in common. I'm excited for this topic. Leadership is something that I try and do, and I read a lot about leadership, and I call my style a servant leader because that's how I feel like I engage with those that report to me and those that I have relationships with. And so I want to start out by there's an interesting thing with the mind-body connection and the association with leadership. So could you please explain that mind-body connection in simple terms and why it is so crucial for leaders to understand?
Yeah, so I would say that leadership really starts with you. I have a fun play on words in saying lead your ship. If you lead your ship first and you're in the driver's seat of your life, and you're recognizing what the ecosystem around you is like, and you can be kind of a mad scientist with your life and your body, I think the more that we can understand who we are, why we're put on this earth, what our strengths are, what our needs are, what our goals are, it's a really good foundation. And getting curious to be able to spend some time alone to look within and start from there. And I think the more that we get curious in who we are, to be able to live and lead in the way that we desire and step into our strengths, I think the more that we can be curious and also connect with others, right? And I think leading yourself first sounds cliche, but it's easier said than done, right? Because it does take time. And I find that so often we are so busy and we're serving so many other people that sometimes our health and wellness takes a back seat. And to answer your question about the mind-body connection, we're a bunch of human doers. And my goal and my movement is to get back to being and understanding the human element of leadership and understanding from a deep level the foundation of the personal competence of leadership so that we can connect more deeply with others.
That's good advice, because we have to have our own life and ourself set and righted before you can help others. I like the analogy of you can't pour from an empty pitcher. And if our pitcher is empty, then we are not going to be able to fulfill that purpose that you're talking about and help others in the way that we can if we maintain our own health and wellness and we have the full picture. How has the understanding of the mind-body connection evolved over time, and how does it relate to modern leadership practices?
Really, in the last 20 years, personal development and understanding the mind has grown exponentially. Of course, with the internet and especially since COVID, right? There's been a lot of evolution of personal development, and I would say a mental health crisis, right? The
Right.
need to understand why we are struggling, why there's so much medication out there, why are we giving children, right? Now there's just so much that is impacting our future and the future leaders, right? And so I'm really passionate about changing that narrative and breaking some of the generational traumas, really, and these patterns that keep getting passed down. And I think really, like, if there were to be a more powerful time in our history, it's right now to be able to really harness what it means to be mentally and physically and spiritually well from a holistic approach, right? And I think there's just so much out there that we can research. There's so many different sciences, and there's so much more out there that I think it can get really confusing for people. And that's where I think it's just, hey, what is my role? And how can I focus on what I can control in my own ecosystem, right? In my own household? What are the conversations I can have? And most importantly, what is the conversation we're having with ourselves? And I know for me, being in the military, I just retired after 22 years. There was a lot that we weren't allowed to talk about. And even as a child, like what we didn't talk about at the dinner table, we're not talking about our emotions, right? There was a lot of generational impacts and in what our mental health is like right now. And I think now I'm seeing a really big shift in corporations, in mental health days, in providing more services, which I'm really excited about. I know for me, I'm a lot of energy, and being me, NFL cheerleader in the military, people are like, what are you? You're so weird. You're too much energy. I can't talk to you until I had 2 cups of coffee. Go sit in the corner and we'll come get you when we need you. And so for a long time, I walked around feeling like I was weird. And when I started to learn about personality styles and psychology and human development, I sunk into my unique talents and strengths. And I didn't find myself so weird. There's a lot more on the internet that people scroll and compare, scroll and compare, scroll and compare. And I think many times we as humans forget that our brain is a processing system and it's like a computer system. And so every single thing we see, every single click, every single video, our brain is processing and comparing and sorting. So it does this sorting, and it's no wonder why we're exhausted and depleted and burned out and stressed and overwhelmed and eating our feelings. And so I'm excited for the direction in which we're going. And, but I think it really does start with the individual recognizing, like, hey, what am I controlling? What is in my ecosystem that I can control? And that's nutrition, that's your fitness, your mental well-being, who you surround yourself with, and what I call like the energy force field of your ecosystem. I believe that we are in control of some of those things.
You mentioned burnout, and we live really in a fast-paced society, and there's a lot of chronic stress, and there's good research showing that when you're under chronic stress, even if it's mild stress, not moderate to severe stress, but just mild, if you can't get that under control, eventually you get dysregulated, and it can lead to other mental health conditions like depression and anxiety and other things. So how does chronic stress impact leadership effectiveness, decision-making, and overall well-being, and what can we do to combat its negative effects?
I think ultimately chronic stress over time, it really erodes our ability to respond and react in a positive way. And so that's why I love the work that I do in emotional intelligence. And I'm studying also compassionate inquiry, which is a trauma-based therapy of how we manifest our emotions and stress and traumas in our body physically. And I'm living proof that, I just kept shoving down my emotions, shoving down, not feeling like I could have a voice or that anybody would care or listen, right? And so until I was completely so restricted that my body shut down. And our body gives us cues. And a lot of times we're too busy and we have to serve everyone and our children and our families and our business and our career. We just go, go, go and push, push, push. And we suppress all of those cues that our body gives us until it just sends up this big flag where it's like, no, you're going to sit down until you listen. And so I think so often we just get so numb to these cues and we're used to just operating at such a high performance that we're just go, 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 check your feelings at the door, just no mental health days, we have a job to do, push that aside. And so we've kind of developed this hustle culture. And so it's not until it's an emergency diagnosis that people are finally like, okay, enough's enough. Now I'm finally ready to take charge. Where I would love to see a proactive approach, right, to our holistic wellness, that we have not necessarily a full balance, because we're never like fully balanced. But to your point, we can't pour from an empty cup. And if we don't have certain, what I call buckets, filled, then we're going to react and respond in such a negative way, because this chronic stress causes so much anxiety and like things inside of us that we don't understand all the 400 to 1,000 different types of emotions that we process in a day, right? And so if people don't do a download and so they can think clearly, reflect and react in a positive way, that impacts our leadership and when I say leadership, it's really, it's relationships. It's leadership of your household. It's leadership of your church, of your business, and your career, right? So whether you work in a corporate setting or you're running a business or you're at church, right? The chronic stress plays a role on our reaction times and our response and our ability to connect. And I think at a foundational level, we are human beings and we're meant to connect. And especially given, the things that are happening in the United States right now, there's so much conflict. And what happened to like love your neighbor, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I love this work. So I know that was a long answer, but I'm so passionate. I could talk for hours on this.
Mindfulness is something that's not new. It's been around for centuries, but I think it's kind of experiencing a renaissance where more people are becoming aware of it and starting to try and practice it and experience its benefits. So how can mindfulness practices enhance a leader's ability to stay focused, calm, and resilient?
I always thought it was kind of like woo-woo, and I myself was too busy. I'm like, I have too much. I can't meditate. I don't have time for yoga. I don't have time for that. I always had time though for my non-negotiables, which are movement, at least 30 minutes a day, good, healthy nutrition, balanced meals, 90 to 95% clean. I like to practice flexible eating. So movement, nutrition, hydration, at least half your body weight in ounces per day, and then sleep.
Yeah.
I recognize that my sleep, especially traveling all over for the military and for my business, like if I don't get at least 6 to 7 hours of sleep, my mental health is impacted instantly. And so those are my 4 non-negotiables. And so that's what I've really found a good foundation on. And then I'm like, what about this mindfulness, this meditation? So that's kind of been my mindfulness practice. And then in the last 4 or 5 years, I've really been dabbling into more meditation, more breath work, and more very focused on what I'm trying to achieve in my life to create more balance. And so really being mindful and curious of like, where are my blocks? and journaling that each day, and then saying, okay, what can I do right now? What are the tools that I have in my tool belt to be able to ask for help or do a meditation or go to a conference or a training or a retreat to be able to learn. And I think that has been really powerful. And writing down my goals and being mindful of where I'm at and where I'm going has also been a really, really powerful tool. This manifestation is, another thing that I was like, what is that manifestation thing? I didn't realize that I was doing it well before I actually learned about, mindfulness and manifesting. I'm like, wow, it's no wonder why I achieved all the things that I did. I've been doing this for a long time. And so I truly believe that we can have inner peace and have a lot of dialogue. And that's why the book is called A 90-Day Action Plan to Embrace Chaos and Live a Fulfilling Life, because we can have a lot of stuff happening up here in what I call spaghetti brain. And there's a way to sort it and analyze it, to put it in lanes, really nice organized package, to be able to say, okay, where do we need to triage? What can we do better in this area? Where can we be more mindful and present in this area? And how can we be more mindful and present in the 4 to 6 inches between your ears?
Yeah.
And that inner peace, I believe, is such a beautiful freedom that I never knew it was possible. And it's been such a beautiful energy. Everyone's like, Crystal, how do you do so much? How do you have this light and this energy? And you could just be like this. You wake up like this? Yes, because I've been aligned to my purpose, my passion. I step into my gifts and I'm curious each and every day. And I continue to unpeel the layers to evolve and learn and grow even more.
You mentioned nutrition, which I really think is the foundation of our health. If you're not giving your body the fuel it needs each day, then you're just not going to perform very well. What are some key nutritional strategies that leaders can adopt to optimize their cognitive function and emotional balance?
I would just say be mindful, learn how to read labels. One of the biggest tips that I share with my clients is go on the outside of the grocery store. Think about the outside of the grocery store. You got your fruits and your vegetables, we have your protein sources, right? And anything on the inside is got a lot of extra stuff in it, right? And
Processed.
correct. And, there's a lot of different ways that we can eat for our body type, our blood type, gluten-free, paleo, all these things out there. What I would always recommend is just know what you're putting into your body, know sensitivities and allergies that you have, get a full panel. Because I think the more mindful we are with our unique body and DNA and what it is, I always say your body's like a vehicle. You put junk in your car, guess what? It's going to run like junk. And if you don't get an oil change, and if you don't pop open the hood and check the oil and top off the fluids and actually pull over on the side of the road, if you got a flat tire, I had a flat tire last week. I couldn't wait to tell the analogy, right? I was like, didn't. I was like, oh gosh, I have a flat tire. I should have checked sooner.
Yeah.
Right. And so often we wait until it's too late, till we have a flat tire to pull over and check the engine and check the oil. So if we were proactive in setting up ourselves for success, and I love to help with meal planning and prepping and batching. So it's easy grab and go. So it's not easy go through the drive-through or
Yeah.
easy Uber Eats, right? We have to be mindful in our life where I can still have chocolate for dessert. I can have a glass of wine. I'm not just counting, 6 peas and, 10 almonds. I'm like, I want to enjoy life and have fun and be social. But there's a really great way to do it if we're mindful and we know what our body likes and dislikes and we know what our goals are. And when I was running for marathons, and even after being in the wheelchair, got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, at the young age of 22, I was like, what's inflammation? And I didn't know until my whole leg was filled with joint fluid and I was getting extracted at the ER from a huge needle. And so I read Arthritis for Dummies in 2005 before the internet, before Dr. Google, and I started researching, like, what are anti-inflammatory diets? What should I be putting in my body? What is mindfulness? What is therapy? And, I started to build these tools as a young adult, just really in survival mode. I didn't read and research this stuff until I think most humans don't until something goes wrong and you're like, oh, I'll do anything. And so I think being our own advocate is the biggest gift that we can give ourselves.
Yeah, it's all about clean food, fresh food as much as you can. And I agree that it doesn't mean you can't ever have a dessert or something like that. It's just you can't forget the last time you had a dessert. If you had it the last 2 nights, probably not a good idea to continue that trend and have 3 desserts in 3 days in a row. You mentioned that fitness or exercise and movement is one of your non-negotiables. How does regular physical activity contribute to a leader's mental clarity, energy levels, and just overall well-being?
Yeah, I know personally, crawling out of the wheelchair, I could not walk. And so I felt like I couldn't move. And so when I know personally, when the body slows down, it will shut down. And, Newton's law, body in motion stays in motion. And so that stuck in my head. And like, I'm literally crawling to the kitchen before I could walk. It would take me a good 20, 30 minutes before I could actually be able to walk. And so when I could, I didn't take it for granted. And so I started walking and I would go for walks and I would just walk one light post to the next. And then the next day I would just do 2 light posts. So it was just one step at a time. And then I started running and I started to learn how much I was curing myself mentally, being in this constant reflection and understanding at a deeper level what that connection was with the physical activity and that willingness to just push a little bit further and have that accomplishment. And I think a lot of people they want the motivation to just knock knock, it's coming at your door, get out of bed, right? It's time to motivate. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way, right? And so knowing from a mental standpoint where we want to be and what we want for our lives and how we want to feel, and we can chase that and then take a step. And this can be, obviously we're talking about fitness right now, but this can be anything in your life, in relationships, in finances, in your business, or in fitness. Once you get moving, it's like, oh, this actually feels good. And we're processing. And I always say too, like with our emotions, if we just keep stuffing things and we don't extract and release the gunk that's happening, we are going to implode or we're going to explode. So part of, the brain process is we need to be able to blow off steam. And so finding ways for those mindful practices to blow off steam and get our body moving and sweating and regulating and processing everything. My fitness program is like tomorrow we do Fighter Friday is karate and kickboxing moves. I'm a kickboxing instructor. So I always say it's cheaper than anger management, right? Get it out, punch it out so we don't take it out on other people, right? And so that's a really beautiful way to just challenge your own body and see what it's capable of and just push a little bit more, recognizing where that limit is and say, you know what? I'm made for more. I'm capable of more. I'm going to take one more step. And I always say 1 step at a time, 1 repetition at a time, 1 round at a time, maybe 1 mile at a time, just 1 day at a time, stronger than yesterday. And that breeds a level of motivation and that accomplishment that compounds over time. And then before you know it, you never know what could be possible. You could be running a 50-mile race and be in a documentary, right? I went from wheelchair to running 26-mile marathons in a 50-mile race. And, it's more mental, I think. And I think if we really can get our mental health in check and just be consistent and diligent, just taking 1 small step each and every day.
Yeah, it's really about do what you can and then progress from there. It's trying to go a little bit further, do a little bit more each day, and your body will generally adapt to that, and so that you can progress and see those gains and those results that you want to see. Krystalore, staying on physical well-being, leaders often have to juggle empathy and accountability, and that requires emotional intelligence. So how does your physical well-being or just your overall wellness play into building emotional intelligence, and how can leaders apply this daily?
Yeah, I think many times leaders have so much on their plate, right? Whether you're a leader of your household or corporation or a business, right? Let's take that leader, um, in a grand scheme. So everyone is a leader, regardless of your title, I believe. And I think if we're not dealing with our life stressors and pressures, and I always say, like in the beginning, leading yourself first and making sure that you're working at your optimum performance. I think it really starts with you. And if we're in this anxiety, like stressed, overwhelmed, that energy is contagious. And also grounded, positive, light, present energy is also beautiful. And so often as leaders, we want to tell everyone and we want to show everyone, I'm so stressed and overwhelmed. And that is not a very good energy, right? And so those that are low in emotional intelligence or EQ or EI
Mm-hmm.
don't manage their stress and anxiety and channel it in a way that they're leading themselves so that they can walk into a boardroom. They can step up on a stage and make sure that they have their non-negotiables in check, their mindfulness practices in check. And I'll tell you, I'm in a really difficult season right now, and I had a really challenging day. And there has to be a way to be able to channel that in a healthy way, to be authentic and say, you know what? I'm having a tough time right now, but I'm making sure I'm taking care of me so that I can be present for you. And to your point of like putting your own oxygen mask on first
Mm-hmm.
and getting curious and recognizing where our triggers are, where did I eat? I made sure I had a very nutritious meal at least an hour and a half before this. I had to plan for an 8 p.m., showtime. And so it takes a little bit of backwards planning. And I think so often we're in this reaction mode and like, frantic, that we're not operating at our best. And when we're not operating at our best, we can't have empathy and connection with others. I think it's a beautiful space to just honor where we're at, be present, be authentic, and also be vulnerable too. And just say, you know what? This is where I'm at. And I think no one expects us to all to be perfect. This is all of me. And I think that is a beautiful gift that you can give as a leader, to the next generation, to your family, to your church, to your business, to your career, to your coworkers, to your loved ones. Is just make sure you're taking care of you. And empathy is being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and sit with them.
I'm glad we're having this conversation, because I think one of the things that the world is lacking right now is strong leaders. And we need strong leaders that can lead homes, families, communities, churches, businesses, and states, countries. I mean, we just need stronger leaders in order for us to move in the right direction. And a lot of that comes from leaders who are actual leaders. I have a quote that's on the wall of my office and I'm probably paraphrasing it, but it says something to the effect that when I speak to a manager, I feel they're important. When I speak to a leader, I feel important. And so it's all about having that empathy for the other person and trying to put yourself in their shoes and say, how would I want to be treated if I was on the other side of this? So I'm glad that we're helping people discover some things that maybe can improve their leadership so that they can become a stronger leader in whatever capacity that they want to become in their life. Next question: how can leaders use the mind-body connection to set healthier boundaries while staying productive in an always-on world? I think that's something a lot of leaders struggle with, is setting boundaries. And I know I do, because, I don't want to let people down, and I don't want to disappoint people, and I want to be there and help as much as I can. But I have to continually tell myself I need that full picture so I can do that and continue to do it. So what advice do you give on that subject?
Oh gosh. Well, I'm going to start with my famous line is empower yourself to put yourself and your health first for at least 34 minutes a day.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take anything from this, the 34-minute mindset is 2 minutes of goal setting, gratitude, intentions, prayer if you do it, 30 minutes of movement, and 2 minutes of celebration and
Mm-hmm.
reflection at the end of every single evening. And so that daily check in with yourself of what are my intentions? Who needs me at 100%? What are my priorities that are going to align with my goals today? And how can I make sure I get my non-negotiables in line? And then at the end of every single, we let the day go, right? We time block and organize who needs us, what can kind of push to the side today. And I, I do this practice every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of every single day, I'm like, self, would I fire myself today? How did we do? And what got in the way? What were my emotions? What crept in that wasn't planned? And what can we do differently tomorrow? Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's like, hey, let's just take what we didn't accomplish today. I was able to pour into my niece that, she was crying at her first breakup, whatever that was. And, so, okay, I didn't get my edits for my next book that I planned on to today, but I'm going to wake up 15 minutes earlier tomorrow. But
Mm-hmm.
I think when we can start with our non negotiables and our intentions, that way, we're not a slave to other people's priorities. I think many people wake up and scroll. I have do not disturb on my phone. And that's the tip. I put do not disturb on my phone until I'm done with my morning workout, my journaling with my coffee, my mindfulness, and I talk to my mother. After that, then my phone goes on off a do not disturb, and then it's game time. Like then I'll check my emails. And so I think really setting up a routine for oneself is important. And that's the last thing that I find that people do is like they're so worried about the morning routine and it's the evening routine that needs a little bit of cleanup, right?
Mm-hmm.
When do we eat? Do we snack late at night? Are we drinking alcohol? Are we scrolling? Are we binging Netflix? Do we fall asleep on the couch and then we're getting up in the middle of the night? Are there people or animals in our bed that are disrupting our sleep? There's so many variables that play a
Mm-hmm.
role in this, right? And so when it comes to boundaries, I think we need to figure out what we need and then be able to communicate it. Right. And so you shared, you're a servant leader and you're just so caring and loving and empathetic, right? One of the things that I love to do is help people understand their own personality style and their own temperament and the way they see the world. And you made a point earlier about treating others like as a good leader, feeling seen and heard and understood from your perspective is versus like, oh, the leader is like up here and I'm so, awesome. But until
Mm-hmm.
you feel seen and heard and understood and valued and like you belong, that's when we're going to connect. And that's when you're going to feel more engaged. And so when we go back to what we can do for boundaries is the more that we understand our own temperament and our own strengths and our own vision in which we see the world, and also recognize that it might be different than others. So if we get curious on temperament and personality and love languages, right, you know that your needs might be different than your partner's, might be different than your children. And so often we project, right? And so I think it's important to do this work and get curious to say, here are my needs, and here's what I think your needs are according to your personality style. And I love to work with families and couples, and I do vision board workshops to be able to help, have these types of depth conversations, goal setting, problem solving. What can we do? How can we work together versus being angry and resentful? And I think a lot of times people don't set boundaries or communicate boundaries because they don't feel seen, they don't feel safe. And there's so much conflict that it's like we need to start with the end in mind of like, hey, we're in relationship. How can we make this work? So I think just really understanding to the depths of really what you need, but also be Gumby and be willing to work with your loved ones and understand, have that empathy of other people's perspectives as well.
You make a really good point about those do not disturb settings on your phone. That's been invaluable to me because I have an international or a global audience, and their time is not always the same as mine. And there was a time when I didn't have those settings, and I was getting messages that were waking me up in the middle of the night from people that were sending me direct messages. And so I similarly have some do not disturb set, especially in the morning, so that I can wake up, I can get my exercise in. And for me, it's prayer and scripture study. And then once that's done, then I can start maybe looking at my phone, but my phone stays on the nightstand until I've got those three things done, so that I'm prioritizing things that are very important to me in my life. And I think that's something that is really problematic in society right now, is people wake up and the first thing they want to do is they start scrolling, and then they get lost, and pretty soon 30 minutes have gone by and they haven't accomplished anything in the day. And that's not the way you want to start a day out. On the last question, I wanted to ask, what does the future of leadership look like, and how can leaders integrate the mind-body connection into their leadership style to drive positive change?
The future of leadership. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's a more collaborative
Mm-hmm.
approach. I think it's less structured, and I would love to see more physical and social activity in our leadership, like social, physical, mind, body, spirit connection in our workplace and in our teams. That is a huge value of mine. My four values are fun, faith, fitness, and family.
Mm.
And so we got to have fun, we got to have faith, got to make sure we're mentally and physically fit. And we're a family, we're a chosen family. And so I think the more that we can surround ourselves with a set of values that are shared, it's not so much about status and, titles. It's like, how can we leverage each other's strengths? I would just love to see people working together, the diversity of thought, global movement of, global teams, virtual teams, the social media and the technology that is an AI. Like, there's just so much out there, and there's so much that we can utilize. And I think one of the things you said earlier kind of brings me to, like, if you think you can't, you're right. If you
Mm-hmm.
think you can, you're right. And I think a lot of us are walking around with a lot of experience and a lot of depth and a lot of trauma in our bodies. And so to bring the mind body connection back into it is like, if we're not processing what's happening in it from our lens of societal pressures, economic pressures, relationship challenges, financial stressors, faith and family, like there's so much that we're juggling, and we're walking hearts and minds. And the more that we can see each other from walking hearts and minds and having this human experience, and we're all just trying to navigate this difficult thing called life, that would be a dream come true for me. That everyone takes their health and fitness seriously, that they see each other for the human that they are, bring more humanity back into this world with so much chaos and conflict and negativity, and just see what could be possible by working together, bridging gaps, bridging generational gaps, reverse mentoring with, instead of kids these days, we can learn a lot from the kids these days, right? I would love to see that. That's what I would love to see, is more of a collaborative space. And I really think that we're going there, especially with this, if we do embrace the generational changes and the technology, anything could be possible. And I'm excited.
I love that thought of collaboration and teamwork, because each of us has different and unique talents and skills and knowledge. And so when we unite with other people, then we can accomplish greater things. We can do more because we're leveraging everybody's unique skills, talents, abilities, and knowledge. And that is really important if you want to accomplish more. You can go fast alone, but you may not be able to actually accomplish the best thing alone. I appreciate your time this evening, Krystalore. It's been a great conversation, and I think there's a lot of good information that's been shared that people can glean from and hopefully not just improve their leadership, but improve their lifestyle and their wellness. It's all about what kind of quality of life do you want later in your life, because you don't want to just live longer. You want to live healthier for longer. And that's all about the choices that you're making right now. So make the good choices right now to have a healthy lifestyle that will allow you to thrive more as you're older. And I want to say thank you for your service. I really appreciate the service that you provided in 20 plus years in the Air Force.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your time with us today. I hope you've gained insights to elevate your health and life. For more transformative evidence-based wisdom, I invite you to explore my 20-plus books at authorscott.com/shop. Don't miss out on the chance to supercharge your health and guide others to a better life. Like, share, and subscribe to join the movement transforming lives. Here's to your journey toward boundless health and happiness.